there have been many times in our marriage where love has been a choice.
What advice would you have for couples who are entering into an engagement or planning to get married at some point?
Get out of honeymoon, date, romance land and into a little bit more of the, like, we share a bathroom era of things where you're having real conversations.
Has social media diminished the art of hosting?
I love a curated aesthetic, so don't get me wrong, but I don't think that's what makes an event great.
How do you negotiate the time split between parenting, business, and then personal time with your husband?
Allowing myself to be a really good wife on a Monday and potentially a really good CEO on a Tuesday, and being okay with both.
Sarah from the Mostest, welcome to the HelloPrenup Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. So for all of those who may not know, tell us a little bit about the Mostest and yourself.
So Mostest is the luxury of booking a real human professional event planner on demand. And we work with thousands of professionals across the country. And you can book Mostest to help you find a venue, all the way to doing DIY setup or coordinating or handing out the name tags, depending on, what the business event or what the event of choice is that day. I started building Mostest really because I hate event planning, as luck would have it. I love gathering, and I've always really appreciated the value of in-person connection. But I found with motherhood and a growing career, even well before Mostest, that I was the person that was doing a lot of that, whether it be within my family or group of friends, milestone birthdays, engagement parties, divorce party, whatever it was. And I tried to hire a planner, especially as my career took off. And the mental load for me was at the time a distraction. And when I went to hire a planner, I found it really challenging. The unit economics didn't necessarily work for the size and scope of the events that I was hosting. And so I actually went into market as an event planner, which is why I can say with confidence that it is the hardest job out there. And I learned a lot about the professional community and what makes them tick. And technology has an amazing way of removing a lot of the repetitive work that they hate. And you think about what AI can do and, continue to do as it continues to improve. And in saving planners tons of time, we're able to pass that benefit back to those who are hosting and remove that mental load off of consumers' plates and actually give the professional, way more work. So it's been a win-win overall, but it really started with me just being overwhelmed.
What made you decide to start a business? Because there's a big leap between throwing a party, getting a little frustrated with the planning process, and then starting what is effectively a marketplace.
Yeah, the honest answer is that I've always been incredibly career-driven, and I started working for big brands in consumer and B2B and strategy. And while I loved the challenge and the camaraderie that came with that, I always had an entrepreneurial itch. And for a long time, I was able to scratch it with certain projects or certain teams or task force within those corporations. But I hit a point in my career where I was growing fast and I was climbing the, ladder, escalator, whatever you want to call it. And I had a boss and a dear friend go on sabbatical. And so I got to take this big job for a month. And when I looked around and I saw my life and what made sense for me, I felt like even at that level, there was limited creativity. And we were still sort of executing somebody else's vision, which is great for some. But for me, that was the moment where I realized that I could do this another 10 years. But if I really want to flex that muscle, I'm going to have to take a chance on myself.
Amazing. What was it like jumping in and starting your own thing?
Well, it was a bit interesting to start, that's for sure. I get asked a question a lot, how did you get started or when to start? And my advice is always just start somewhere. And the journey with Mostest was not that different. I just started. I posted at the time an ad on a couple of, wedding platforms that allow vendors to advertise. And I started taking inquiries and learned a lot just by doing. And as we got busier and I started refining my hypothesis, it became a really natural point to sort of exit corporate life and really dedicate myself to, the great experiment at the time that was Mostest, which was really, will people pay for parts of this service? And would it be as helpful to other people as it would have been to me?
I know that you have 3 children.
I do.
Did that play into the decision to leave corporate life?
Ironically, yes, which was just very silly in a way because I made the decision to leave when I was actually expecting my third. And it was a combination of things, but I felt at the time for my family having the power to choose when I was on the road, especially in those early days where you're just building on your own terms. It was the right time for my family, for me to be, exploring that. And then also, it was the right time in my career too. So Audrey was with me a lot of the early days of Mostest. And I actually think that's really cool.
That's amazing. And it's great for her. I mean,
Totally.
As she gets older, she's going to look back and see pictures and video of how ingrained she was in that experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And all of them have. I mean, I know you have a child as well.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not, work-life harmony is definitely more realistic than work-life balance. And my kids have been to my office, all of the things. So they're definitely integrated into the culture.
I love that, work-life harmony.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I have not heard it phrased that way before.
I wish I could give credit to who I heard it from. I definitely did not make it up. But it's the idea that work-life balance is an illusion and that, you have this perfect, mystical, magical balance between family and friends and work. And work-life harmony says that on some days I'm, a killer CEO and, maybe I'm not as present with my kids. And then on other days I'm at the school performance and I'm coming in late. And that's harmony. Balance looks like 50-50, and I don't think that's realistic.
It's not realistic.
Yeah. How has your experience been with building the prenup?
It's been crazy, but my daughter comes to so much with me. I mean, she was just here in the studio while we were filming podcasts, sitting right over there.
Amazing.
A couple weeks back, and she's just she's been such a part. I mean, for me, it's been a learning curve, right?
Yeah, of course.
This is my first business. This is my first child. And she's always been ingrained in HelloPrenup in some way, whether it's I'm on a meeting and she doesn't understand boundaries and just jumps in. I mean, she's a COVID baby, right? So she doesn't remember a time before Zoom. HelloPrenup hosted a wedding for our Shark Tank update. So we had Kevin O'Leary marry a couple, a HelloPrenup couple, and my daughter, Eleni, was the flower girl,
Amazing.
right? And she still, to this day, tells everybody who will listen about that time when she was on TV for a wedding. And they're like,
her big moment.
Yeah, I know, it's her moment.
Yeah, that's great.
And so, I think as a mom, as moms, we have to really learn to do both, and you want to experience all of it. And I will live and die on this hill, but I just don't think you should have to choose. I think if you want to choose to be a stay-at-home mom, that's admirable and it's amazing, but I don't think you should have to choose. And so many women are forced into this corner where it's you can't have it all, career or family. And I find that so manifestly unfair.
I agree. It's something I think about a lot. As you build a company, as you know, you build a culture.
Yeah.
And you have to think really thoughtfully around what that means. And I have been very vocal about the fact I want to create a culture where parents can thrive, which looks really different than a traditional American workplace, actually. And we're very hardworking. I mean, we're always, how startup life is. There's no, at least in our world, we're absolutely in growth mode and just...
Yeah. There's no beginning
and end. So the least we can do is offer the flexibility to drop your kids off, pick them up, go to an activity. I think it doesn't have to look so traditional. And I find that, at least within my team, that they are able to have it all too, which then, I don't know, I think it just lifts us all up in terms of energy and positivity. And when you're not feeling like you're sort of having something taken from you.
Yes.
And also trusted to just manage your time. I think that's huge.
And what does that look like for your team? How do you structure that in a way that allows everybody to feel autonomy over their schedules while still being collaborative?
In the spirit of, I thought about this a lot and probably definitely did it wrong at first. Where I've come to now and the team has come to alongside me is that the only way that works is high trust. And trust is given, but high trust comes from deliverables and performance. And so if we all agree that flexibility is important, we also all agree that we're committed to that same extremely high level of performance and an even higher level of trust. And that's not for everybody. It's actually not for most, I think. But in our world, I've been very fortunate to find some of the really, really good ones who are incredibly talented and motivated, who would thrive no matter where they are. You know, those are the types of stars that I think thrive and can be make that sort of dream of work-life harmony a reality. If you think about it, if you have a team of C players, which I doubt neither of us do, obviously, but if you did, you would have to check in, and it would have to be structured, and you have to have, you know, processes for every element, and that's okay too. But it's been hard at times because the flip side of that is we've had to let people go very quickly who are not able to handle it because it slows the entire thing down.
Yeah, and I think these are all lessons that you learn as a first-time business owner.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yes. Yes, I think we will all write a book someday of a chapter of the different lessons we've learned. But I think being less apologetic for that and more just clear, I think really helps. It helps us hire smarter, and it's also helping us make those decisions really quickly with clarity.
How do you think women lead differently in a business like yours?
I think a lot of it is communication. I think that what I've seen, and we're primarily an all-female leadership team. We have, I think now 2 males in the company, so we're very female. And for us, I think some of the advantages are the communication style, for sure. The second thing I see is and this might just be specific to the individuals I have on my team, but I do see an innate ability to read the room, intuition. And again, this might be exclusive to the individuals on my team, but I see that as superpowers of some of the females that I have, and I think I have that too. And I think some of it might come like parenting and some of the roles we have as females. I think that's a developed skill set in a way where you have to be intuitive.
So tell me specifically how the Mostest works. Are you a tech platform? Are you more like marketplace with people doing the matching?
Yeah, no, great question. And it's evolved. When we started, I was the Mostest platform. Her name is Sarah. But I was fortunate to work with a great VC out in Denver, and we found an amazing CTO and have since become a platform. And the platform is a combination of marketplace as well as just true technology that is making event planning much simpler. So we're thinking about ourselves as event professional superpowers. So a lot of repetitive, sort of mind-numbing tasks go into the admin of an event leading up to it. In addition to that, AI is obviously getting much better every day, and we have several agents that are learning how to make really smart recommendations with really good insider data into what is actually cool, which partners are really great, which venues are perfect for which type of event, which venues are perfect for which type of event, and so on. But at the end of the day, there is a lot about an event that cannot be done with AI and technology, and that is primarily on the day of the event itself. And so it's a really interesting business in the sense that we are very much building tech and SaaS and all of that good stuff, but we are very much, building what I think to be the future of what the event professional community will look like when we think about how AI will disrupt certain things.
What is the number one type of event that people are hiring for outside of weddings? I feel like that's obvious.
Yeah, we started with weddings, and that was really our focus, certainly for the first 12 months of the business. And the reason for that is there's no higher stakes event out there.
Yeah.
So I thought if we could like nail it with weddings and figure out technology to vet and technology to match, which is now all technology, I'm happy to report, that we could move on from there into other areas. The second biggest use case for us is actually business. And a lot of our business has come from couples who use Mostest. So we joked when I first started the business, I had this antiquated, roadmap. When you make a business plan of it will be weddings and then they'll come back for baby showers and so on and so forth. But they actually, I call them my power couple. They come back for work now. So they're getting married and then they have these jobs that require them to take on the same mental load that I was taking on when I started it. And that has been amazing because, the value of in-person connection, I think, is more important than ever, especially as it relates to businesses. And a lot of businesses avoid it because it's just such a time suck, but it actually drives so much value for them. And it's a huge white space when you think about the industry and what's available out there. A lot of them are thinking about those mega events and super big events, where for us, we actually love small to mid-size events. It's our sweet spot.
It's more intimate.
Yeah, more intimate, or just less. We're not necessarily targeting the space, I think, that's very well served. And it's over half of event spend is in small to mid-size events. So if you think about your business, small to mid-size is under 200.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that small either.
Yeah. I want to dig into you a little bit more.
Sure.
So where did you grow up, and at what point in your life do you think inspired the entrepreneurial journey?
My dad was a naval aviator, and I grew up moving every 2 to 3 years, which I think gave me a interesting skill set to be able to build a business. Definitely no fear of rejection or, having to be, I think, brave in those little moments of transition. But that's not what inspired me to be an entrepreneur. My mom was a full-time mom throughout the entire journey of my dad being in the service. And she actually started a series of businesses throughout. She did everything. She was just such a hustler. She did everything from hand painting plates that were sold at Nordstrom for Santa to put cookies on, to when we moved up north, working at Old Navy for like a month to get us half off of winter gear, to starting a really successful business actually by the time I was in college that's still around today. And is at times, I think my dad technically works for her now, along with a bunch of others. So she is really my inspiration, seeing her create something from nothing time and time again.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
I love, what is her business?
So she runs a real estate business that also does property management that's targeted towards towns with a heavy military presence. So they're primarily in Jacksonville. But if you think about the real estate market, the service requires people to move every 2 to 3 years. And as a result of that, they have a lot of matchmaking of other military folks. And she found herself doing this all the time as, a military wife. And she just decided one day to get her real estate license and then brokerage and all of that. So, and it's built it up from there, but they are managing thousands of properties today.
How did your upbringing and seeing how your parents managed money together, especially if your mom was a stay-at-home mom and then a business owner, how do you think that affected how you see money, business, relationship, and how those things intertwine?
Yeah. So there's almost 2 parts to the answer. My dad was a naval aviator. And while he felt like he was making a massive difference. But with one parent gone as often as he was, which at times was 6 to 8 months at a time, on deployment, that made it incredibly hard for my mom to, have a career. And from a financial perspective, a government salary with one parent, and I was one of three as well. They were very disciplined. We had a beautiful life, but they had to be very thoughtful about how they spent and set a really good example for me in that way. And then I married a wealth advisor. So that I think has, in my adult life, just educated me so much more about, financial hygiene. I mean, my husband was joking this morning when I was telling him what I was up to today that he should be on the podcast instead of me.
Bring him on.
Exactly.
Bring him
He
on.
volunteered.
Great.
He said you were not invited, but yeah.
Next time. That sounds great.
No, but I think it's amazing. And it's I think even just the education and destigmatizing something that's just good financial hygiene is amazing that you guys are doing that.
So how did you and your husband meet?
At a bar, the good old-fashioned way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nobody says that anymore.
I know. We did meet a while ago, in fairness to us. But and it was a classy bar. We met at the rooftop at Bavaria.
Nice.
On a summer Friday. And actually, we had two friends that were hitting on each other. And it was sort of a train wreck to watch. And we bonded over that and really just, exchanged number. And over time, a couple weeks later, went on a date. And really the rest was history from there.
And at what point in your relationship did you know this was your person?
I actually knew after the first date.
Really?
Yeah, I had a really strong intuition. And he felt the same way. Apparently, he told his parents something similar. Yeah. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And when did you first start having serious conversations about finances?
Well, our journey was not conventional.
Okay.
So we dated for a year or two, and we had just gone shopping for engagement rings. And he had big plans to propose to me on my birthday, which is in March. But I found out I was expecting our first in January. So we had a lot of very serious conversations very quickly, starting in January of 2017.
I can imagine.
We just took the fast track on that.
That will necessitate all the conversations.
All the conversations quite rapidly.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And then once you did start having those conversations, I mean, your husband's a wealth advisor.
Yeah.
So
we talked about it all.
Right.
Obviously. Yeah. We were already like cohabitating, so a lot of, but that can feel like the honeymoon phase. I mean, when we made the decision to just expedite getting married because we were super in love and definitely knew it didn't change anything. It just changed the timeline a little bit. And we felt really lucky because we both wanted a family. So it was like timing wasn't perfect, but we were really excited anyway. Yeah. And we actually did not sign a prenup. I know.
You
Blasphemy.
didn't.
I know. And
Shocking.
I would today. We didn't have a lot then. So it was a little bit of, and I don't think we knew, we had no inclination that it was necessary at the time. So there wasn't some big financial event incoming, and I hadn't, become an entrepreneur just yet. Yeah. So we were more like middle of the fairway. That said, it probably would have been wise to do regardless. But we also were just moving so fast that we were so quick to the date that given all of those various circumstances, it wasn't a great use of our time at the time. With that said, I would never do that again. So I think we were just young and in love and didn't have anything would be the honest answer.
I also think the timing, times have changed, right?
Totally.
If you go back to 2016, 2017.
For sure.
It was not accessible to get a prenup. And I was a family law attorney, right? So I would talk to all these couples. I mean, this is how HelloPrenup was born.
Of course.
These couples would be saying I don't want to hire a divorce attorney. This is too expensive. This is too time consuming. And that necessitated HelloPrenup. So I think the barrier to entry is a lot lower now. And I think because of that, people are starting to look at prenups as something that is just easy, logical.
Hygiene.
Exactly.
Hygiene.
Financial hygiene. Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? Yeah. I mean, if it wasn't it's never going to be easier for a financial advisor who works with family lawyers to do it. So if it was enough of a barrier entry for us,
yes.
Can you imagine those who don't, know what it means and had at the time a negative stigma?
Yeah.
For us, it was more of a time spent, not, I think we both philosophically would have actually agreed it would be important.
Do you have any friends who have had prenups?
Most,
Okay.
I think, yeah. Especially those who've gotten married in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I especially think as women and as entrepreneurs and business owners, like we need to be thinking about our finances in a way that feels fair. And so many women are wrapped up in the idea that a prenup is not romantic, but like also marriage over time
It's not romantic.
is not
You
romantic.
beat me to saying it. Like, yeah,
right?
absolutely. Marriage is a lot of different things. But I think romance is not a small part of it, but not necessarily. I think what I love about HelloPrenup and just prenups in general, in addition to, women being able to hopefully accumulate generational wealth and break the glass ceiling and all of that. How long do we have? I can go down that way. I think as couples, being able to have real conversations early, I think is really important. I think about we also were forced to do that because I was pregnant. So there was no like honeymoon phase. It was like, where are we living, and what's our philosophy on this? And are we, going to take her to, all of it, the real conversations happened prior to getting married. And I think a prenup covers part of that, where you're realizing, do you not just view finances the same way, but you're having real conversations about what you think is fair when you're not hostile. And just because it's not romantic doesn't mean it's not important. And I think in many cases probably builds a stronger foundation.
Agreed. And also you still have to file taxes together. Talk about the least romantic thing.
There's a lot of not romantic. Have you changed a diaper?
There's
a lot of not
there's a lot of not romantic things. What are some conversations that you had with your husband during this time before you were married that you felt were really pivotal to having that open line of communication and healthy dialogue around finances?
Yeah. So one of the things we did prior to getting married is we set a monthly budget. So we kept everything, all, 3 pennies that we had before separate. And then we opened a joint account and really aligned on our financial plan. So what are we saving? What are we spending? What are we investing? And, how we actually had a pretty clear view before being married of how that would grow over 3 to 5 years. And so it gave us a sense of like being on the same team where rather than spending being contentious or, I think potentially leaving space for resentment, it was sort of like this collaborative moment. And there are times where Tom's career has taken off. I've obviously started a business and, but when I first started Mostest, not only was it not making money, it was losing money. And us having that sort of shared view and shared goal. And I never felt like we were not equals still because we both were at the table, really active in those conversations.
That's imperative to
Huge.
Both be a part of those conversations. And so many couples lose that thread over time. And then it ends up just one party is the one managing the money.
And it's both sides are terrible, I think, in that. I mean, we've had phases, when I was like creating tiny humans and all of that, where Tom has taken a more active role. And then earlier on, I actually took a more active role in like our household budget. And so I think right now we're very equally yoked and that feels really good.
And how do you negotiate the time split between, you now have this flourishing business, which I'm assuming it started as this little thing and now it's this very real, successful business. How do you negotiate the time split between parenting, business, and then personal time with your husband?
For me, like it really has come down to just going easy on myself because it's not perfect. I know firsthand, but when you're fundraising or it's just insane. And at the end of the day, that is what the business needs in that moment. Similarly, I don't need to take that call during our date night, and I think part of that is it goes back to that harmony concept of allowing myself to be a really good wife on a Monday and potentially a really good CEO on a Tuesday and being okay with both of those things and knowing that I think it's next to impossible to be doing all of them at once at the same time. And if you do manage to pull that off, I think the only person that suffers is you.
I think it's so admirable that you're able to thread all of these pieces together, because I think for most women, it's really difficult to maintain the marriage, the harmony within the marriage, and the business and the kids, right? And the kids are always going to come first. Oftentimes the business is second. I know for me, in my case, marriage was third. And third for me meant it just fell off the cliff, right? And I was so hyper-focused on the first two that, I mean, as you know, ultimately I got divorced. Like, it just, something had to give. And I wasn't willing to give up my work. I just wasn't. So I'm curious to hear, have you had any conversations with your husband around, like, what does this look like? Intentional conversations where you make those decisions together.
Oh, yeah. I think we both were not tricked, but maybe under the impression that this was going to take more time than it did. But that's like not me knowing myself well and being really, honest with myself, because I am all in on something when I start it. And I think it was very cute of me to think that I was going to start this business and like let it ramp up in a way that like worked for my family. And like, that is not how it worked. I was all in, obsessed, building 24/7 from the hospital room, all of it. And that was by choice. And I think what I really appreciate about my partner's name is Tom. One of the many things I appreciate about him is he doesn't make me try to be something I'm not. And I'm not, like, that's who I am. And I think that our marriage is far from perfect, but we do let each other be who we are. And I think that that's taken the pressure off to be Holly housewife and super mama. But like, I think he's given me permission to be someone who really loves what I'm doing, and at times is covered, like he's the one relieving our sitter because I have and he not only is supportive in that he's not giving me a hard time about it, he's supportive in the fact that like sometimes he's jumping in more than he would have otherwise. And I think that's great. Honestly, I think it's great for our kids. I think generally speaking, from day one, he and I have used the terminology co-parent. And there have been times where I've been home on maternity leave, whatever. And then there have been times where he stepped in more. But that first piece around just letting me be who I am, as I think, and that's been, something openly talked about. I think getting to a place where I could say, it doesn't mean we didn't have tense moments and fights along the entrepreneurial journey, because of course we did. It's been a big adjustment, and the 0 to 1, it's like 0 to 100 as an entrepreneur. And so there have been moments, of course, where he's questioned, like, what are you doing? And it's prompted a lot of thoughtful conversation really to that end of like, I love this. This is really fulfilling for me. This is something I didn't realize I always wanted to do, but now that I'm doing it, like, that I feel I was meant to do. And, it's okay for that to be like, I don't need to judge myself, and certainly don't want my partner judging me for feeling that way about building.
No, it's amazing. I see so many women
because it's not our traditional role. And so you almost have to say out loud, like, I'm not a traditional girl, like, take it or leave it, you know, and that's okay.
But I have a lot of friends who were businesswomen, and they left to have children and to be stay-at-home moms. And that's amazing. But the minute they want to start doing something other than that, it becomes really, really difficult for their husbands to handle, because they're like, no, your job is this. You cannot do this. And so I think it's amazing that your husband's saying, I want you to be who you are. And I love and I celebrate all of those parts of you.
It's not about them. Like, it's not about the husband. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's, I think, like the paradigm shift a little bit that us as women, I hope, have. And it's not that you can't like be a good partner and be thoughtful and considerate. Like, I'm not suggesting we should all be selfish. It's more that like whether I have the desire to do something outside the home or not is about me, period. And for many, it's not a choice. So I think that I have, friends who are full-time moms who are absolutely fulfilled and enjoying. And like, I love that for them. That's amazing. And then I have others similar where it's more become a family system thing. And I think that it's just not about, like, of course we joke, like I would love to have someone sort of cater to all of my needs all the time. That sounds great. That doesn't mean that's fulfilling for the other. And I'm not, I'm not suggesting perhaps that that's every scenario, but I do think there's some of that where it's a little bit of like, yeah, of course, that's the feedback. It works really well for them.
I think, and this is where, like, as women, I think communication is really important.
Yes.
And relationships are allowed to change over time. And having a partner that is flexible and accepting and remembering that you're on the same team is essential. One of my drivers behind HelloPrenup is I'm trying to always figure out, like, how do you make that relationship work? How can not only a prenup, but the conversations that come before marriage help inform the quality, the happiness, the longevity of the marriage? And what you're describing to me seems like such a beautiful combination. You're able to communicate, number one. You're accepting of each other for who you are. And ultimately, you're on the same team and supporting each other on that journey.
Yeah, I think we did get a little lucky, because the way in which things accelerated super fast. I think that what I've learned is that I think processes like going through the prenup process, like I have to believe I think there's statistics out there that'll be much more eloquent and succinct on this. I have to believe having conversations like that can help the hit rate. In terms of just like anything, you have to practice. You have to practice good communication when things are hard. And that's coming, whether or not it's at the prenup time or when you have kids or maybe a financial misunderstanding, whatever that looks like. Part of marriage, I think, is the for better or for worse, like for us, it's been like fully embracing the fact that we're both human and having those types of open conversations. But that's not where you start. You think about what dating is and how it can be so feeling based, which is great. Like, I mean, I love love. There's nothing better than being smitten. But with that said, like what gets you there will not get you there. Like being smitten doesn't necessarily translate into, can I have a mature adult conversation? And more importantly, do we see the world the same way? Or can we at least understand a little bit of how the other person sees it and respect that, even if you don't agree?
What advice would you have for couples who are entering into an engagement or planning to get married at some point?
A few things. I think that I believe that there's a couple of opportunities we have now that maybe we didn't even 10 years ago to just make sure you're on the same page. I think one of those things is if you're comfortable cohabitating. I think that if that makes sense for you, and obviously it's different potentially with kids, but I think that the idea of conflict resolution, when you're more, in closer proximity, I think you have more opportunities to get the real stuff. The second is a prenup for sure, like must do. And then I would say, like, when in doubt, there's no shame in a couples therapist. Like, I think thinking about that as like going to the gym rather than conflict management or like SOS oxygen mask stage. There's definitely been times we're out of sync, and that's been something that we've leaned on that's really helped us get the tools to communicate. Because when we got married, I mean, I sound very healthy and balanced. Like, it was not all sunshine and rainbows. We had to learn some of these tools, and we're both very strong personalities. So the communication breakdowns would happen and they could be intense. And we sort of made the decision with kids that we didn't want that we wanted to provide them a more steady environment, even though we're both intense and we don't mind. Like, they're their own people and we don't want them to feel overwhelmed or like mom and dad don't get it. So we made the conscious decision to really strengthen that toolkit through therapy. And that was, for us, something that has also just made me a better communicator in every other area of my life, such as asking open-ended questions and clearly articulating a feeling, like I'm feeling frustrated, like just the tools to be able to understand each other and get back to sort of even ground.
Tell me more about that, because I think it's hard for couples to understand why proactive therapy would be valuable.
I think it's actually quite similar to getting a prenup. Like there's a lot of,
It all comes back to the prenup,
it
doesn't it?
It does in a way, because I think that there's similar stigmas in a sense, like, oh, you're getting a prenup because you think you're going to get divorced. It's like, no. Like, and we're not going to therapy to prevent divorce either.
Yeah.
We're going to therapy because we want to invest in building together. And I think it's just a reframing thing, but I'm incredibly encouraged by what I see. This, like, I sound like such a grandma. This next generation, I feel like the stigma around therapy has also changed quite a bit too, where, 10 years ago, and certainly when you and I started these businesses, even the idea of like a leadership coach, I think the idea that you don't have to have it all figured out and that there are professionals who are trained specifically in thinking about things like communication or leadership or a prenup. Like, we don't have to fake like we're the expert all the time, but we do need to make sure that we're, communicating our values and using our voice in a way that's impactful. And I just found myself, to be honest, like, I was struggling to say what I felt. And as a consequence, I felt at times vice versa, like that I wasn't being heard. But I can't necessarily, I have to own me. So I'm like, if I'm feeling like maybe I don't have the tools to articulate. And most recently, it's actually been in leadership coaching, where I'm really thinking thoughtfully around how I want to build this culture. And as we continue to amp things up, saying what I mean and not potentially over, all of that. And I work with an expert. So I can swirl and think and prepare all day long. But at the end of the day, the expert typically within the first 15 minutes has given me a way better solution, talked me through it. And I think that the idea that you can have help augment your skill set is something that I hope people lean into more. I would think through, if you have the opportunity, potentially cohabitating. I think that you learn a lot about somebody. I know it's not for everybody. And obviously, if there are kids in the, I know it's not black and white. But I think if afforded the opportunity, I think that's a great way to get out of honeymoon, date, romance land and into a little bit more of the, like, we share a bathroom era of things where you're having real conversations. I think making sure you're aligned financially, which would include a prenup, financial plan, just making sure that you're on the same page, not just in what you have, but what you want to build and grow together, because really that's the idea. I think that don't get married in 3 months. I would not recommend it to anybody.
Is that what you did?
That is what I did. But if you really want to test it early, you could just get married in 90 days. And really, your family is everything.
Did you really get married 90 days after you met?
No. 90 days after I found out I was
okay.
No, like 2 years and then 90 days.
Okay.
Yeah. Those are the things that come to mind. And then don't be shy about seeking help when you need it. Marriage is a marathon, and for us, couples therapy has been a really important tool at different times, especially transitioning into parenthood and making sure that we can communicate about that in a way and about our own needs still. It was not all rainbows and butterflies, and having a really fantastic therapist help give us the tools to, at a minimum, just express what we're feeling. It didn't make the problems go away, but in time, the ability to communicate in a healthy way allowed us to get there. And I don't know, we're both very strong people. I think we both probably needed individual therapy at the time in addition to the couples, just because we're both very, very passionate. We're both fire signs. I mean, we're just two strong individuals. So ultimately, we learned things like asking open-ended questions and saying the words, "I'm frustrated," instead of, losing it. So I think for us, therapy was a total game changer. And I wouldn't have said that going in. I think that when I got married, there was a ton of stigma around it, sort of like, well, are you having problems? It's like, well, we're living life. Like, we just had kids. We have a lot going on, and we need to figure out a way to be constructive because we've decided that's important to both of us. So I would say to anyone, like, do not be shy to ask for the help you need, because it's not similar to entrepreneurship. Like, marriage is also not a linear path. There are highs and lows, and that's to be expected.
All right, I have some rapid fire questions
Oh, goodness,
for
I'm excited. Let's go.
you. Most overdone party trend.
Oh, there's so many. I have to steal something I heard last night. I went to this very chic wedding industry event, and I heard an editor of a fashion magazine say that Basque waists are going to be the new mason jar.
Of course.
And I was like, yes, darling, I agree. Yeah,
That's a
so
good one.
I'm stealing that answer. Maybe balloon arches is a second. Just
The worst.
please stop.
Please stop.
Yeah.
So bad.
Yeah.
Best event you've ever been to?
I think my own wedding. It was really fun. Maybe a second would be, I actually went to an amazing wedding this past weekend. I don't know that it was the best I've ever been to, but it was in sunny California. And the entire event, I mean, the planner, can be guilty of hitting on the planner at each event I go to. I found her.
How could you not?
I can't help it. And so obviously told her about the business. But she was amazing. I mean, every detail, it was just the little things you notice about timing and flow, and the food was great. And, it's just so well done. And when something is so a coordinator and team is just on it, I think it makes such a difference for just as a guest, you're sort of just floating throughout the experience, not thinking. And that was the experience this weekend. It was gold.
What event planning hill will you die on?
Hire a planner. Every event should have a planner. And it doesn't matter what your budget is. I mean, that's my Mostest this year. I think it's a lot to put on somebody. Researching venues in New York alone can feel like a second full-time job. So hire a planner, hire Mostest.
If I ever get remarried, I'm hiring Mostest, because let me tell you, I tried to plan my entire first wedding myself. And that was a giant mistake. It was so hard.
It's a lot.
It was, I mean, you don't even realize
while
the
you're
amount
a
of
lawyer
work.
And starting, I mean,
Yeah. You have no idea until you know. So
it's all the detail.
the detail, the contracts, forget
All of
it.
Yeah.
Hosting ick.
Hosting ick. Well, I have a few as it relates to weddings,
Okay.
actually. Charging your guest to come to your wedding.
Gross.
No.
Who's
just
doing that?
Just go to City Hall.
Who's doing
It
that?
was a thing. Not our clients, obviously, but it was a thing. And I respect it. Weddings are expensive, so I don't want to sound insensitive. Weddings are very, very expensive. And more couples than ever are paying for them fully themselves. So I get it. But I think that in life, you have to make choices and decide what's in your budget. And if having a wedding's not in your budget, have a micro wedding, elope. It's never been more chic to elope. Yes. Don't charge your guests for weddings. Yeah. I read an article about that. And again, I'm a pretty modern person, and I was still pretty taken aback by that.
That is shocking.
Yeah.
I don't even.
I love a progressive trend, but I was like, maybe you shouldn't have a wedding. I don't know.
$100 per plate, hand over your
passing
check.
the cast to the
what?
yeah.
No,
yeah, weird.
No.
Yeah.
One thing you wish people knew before throwing a party.
All of the detail that goes into it and how much time it takes. That learning curve is what led me to build this business. And I think in theory, I thought, well, it can't be that hard. And I planned my own wedding. And then the work events and the kids' parties and my sister's engagement, and so on and so forth. And I think the mental load is not something to fully overlook. And you only have so much bandwidth. And so at the end of the day, if you're spending time doing something that you can delegate to someone who respectfully probably will do a faster, better job, and it's not going to completely break the bank, I think that's how we as people can make space to prioritize all these other things that we're talking about, like work and family. But if you just take it on, and that pattern of taking it on as it relates to event planning, I think it ultimately prevents you from having an event. And I think events are really important, because at the end of the day, we as humans, we should be gathering together, but someone has to do the work. So it takes a lot of time, simply said.
Choose your philosophy on love. Do you believe in when you know, or love is a choice?
I believe in both. See all of the above. We talked about this a little before, but when Tom and I met, less about when we met and really at that first date, I definitely had that if you know moment. A lot of it really being based on some of the things he said that really showed his character, that I just was like, wow, this is such an incredible person. But in like our journey of marriage, being honest, there have been many times, I think probably for both of us, where love has also been a choice. And I think that can look like Sarah started a business and is, obsessed with it. And even though maybe I expected this to be a time where we were going to be together more as a family, it's not, but I'm choosing to still love her and love those parts about her. And on the flip side, there have been times where Tom does things like leave the toilet seat up and I still choose to love him. So I won't reveal the real stuff too much, but, it is a choice. And I think in marriage, like choosing each other is certainly something that is a part of it.
Has social media diminished the art of hosting? And do you think hosts are more focused on their event aesthetic rather than the way the event makes their loved ones feel or how they experience that event?
Definitely. I think that it can be a bit of a distraction. I love a curated aesthetic. So don't get me wrong, but I don't think that's what makes an event great. And now as someone who's been to lots of events, notice I didn't talk about the decor from the event this past weekend. It was a lot about timing. I think food matters. I think just the experience of ease and comfort is arguably what makes your guest talk about the event. Social media makes that complicated because that doesn't photograph well. So I think that we've seen expectations that hosts put on themselves, candidly, get really, really high. I think about the idea of a gender reveal when I think about this. That was a phone call to grandma when I had Catherine 8 years ago, and now it's like product lines at Target. So I think that says it all in the sense that like things that it's created milestones, this is the social media paradigm. So
yeah, this concept that people are just thinking about how they're being watched versus
how
actually experiencing the thing,
Yep.
And
now that you mention it, one of the things that was nice about this wedding this past weekend is there was absolutely no social media allowed. They specifically called it out. So not only no photos, but no social media.
I think that is
great.
Incredible. And I respect it so much.
Totally. I'm like, how do I implement this at everything I go to, basically?
Yes.
Because you've seen those photos of people, like the people have done studies where like if we removed phones, how would like humanity look? And you see the pictures of people just everyone looking down at their phone instead of looking people in the eyes and being focused and present and all of that. But I think to give, to defend hosts a little bit, it's, what we're being fed. So I think both can be true. But at the end of the day, I think thinking about the guest experience and thinking about an event like a warm hug instead of just the Instagrammable moment will like lead to a better end result ultimately.
What's the one thing you want couples to remember when planning events together?
What you should focus on is not necessarily what you're seeing on social media. And I think that's where the Prenup, HelloPrenup, and Mostest are so aligned. I really started Mostest because I wanted couples to be able to be present and not fall into sort of what I think to be a DIY trap. And if they were, to at least delegate it to somebody else. I think that like that pressure ultimately can distract you from what you're actually doing, both in the preparation process and actually on the day of. And I think, we certainly see a ton of synergy with what HelloPrenup is doing in the same way of you're focusing on the marriage, not the wedding. And I think that like that's an important reframe as you wedding plan too.
What's the number one outdated rule you think couples should ditch when planning their wedding?
I think ditch all the rules. Ditch absolutely all of them. I love seeing weddings of different sizes in different places with, I think that couples are doing that. And I think that's a reflection of like releasing the pressure a little bit on yourself. But all of the rules, they don't matter. It's really just about you two and what a really fun party and celebrating of that looks like. I think that, a member of my team and I, we joke. I don't know if you've seen the movie where Kate Hudson and Anne Hathaway both get married the same day, and there's only one spot at the plaza.
Yes.
And like in our era, that was the wedding. You know, it was like we all wanted the same dress and the
plaza.
same,
Yeah.
the same flowers and brides, all of that. And what we're seeing is something completely different. Weddings, at least within our clientele, are becoming so much more of a personal expression. And I think that's great. So don't fall into the plaza trap. Not the plaza specifically, but what that movie represents.
How do events bring up bigger relationship dynamics like family dynamics, finances?
Yeah, I mean, in so many different ways, all of those things. And specific to weddings, but also just events. If you think about the last time you went on a bachelorette party and all of a discussion of finances and the splitting, and I think there are full platforms built around solving that specific problem for bachelorettes in and of itself. Obviously, weddings are typically much more expensive, but they also have significant cultural and sometimes religious value to the entire family. So I think there's family dynamics, there's money dynamics, taste, control, problem solving. I always joke, like with my husband, he cared a lot more about certain details than I did, which actually for me was quite nice because I was like, phew, I can really he cares a lot about the band. Like I'm going to delegate to that to him, and I know he will probably pick a better band because he will be in the detail, where I was like, I don't know, I heard they're great. Moving on, busy, soon to be mom, all of that. So I think events, because of the sometimes sticker value, can bring up all of those things.
And how should couples handle the family dynamics? Because that's a big one. I have not met one couple planning a wedding who has not had some issue
with someone in someone's
right.
family. Yeah. I think my advice that we give couples, I mean, obviously I'm not working with our couples anymore, but the advice when I was in market and really learning what it meant to be an event planner and a wedding planner, the advice I would give is that twofold. You have to really decide what's important to you as a couple. And I think that's where it's a really interesting opportunity to communicate with each other. But you also need to have each other's backs in that. With that said, it is a interesting event because of the cultural and religious significance and the change to your entire family. So also giving respect a little bit to that, where it does impact the family, and it's okay for your mom to have an opinion about certain things. And if you know what's really important to you, you can know what to give on and what not to give on. I think there's room for both, if that makes sense, versus, there was this moment in time where we would hear a lot of it's my wedding, and you can't help but feel like it's a little entitled in a way, because it's yes, of course, obviously it's your love story and it's all about you guys. But with that said, your families are also joining on some level. So it is a reflection of your love, but it's also a reflection of two families joining. And it's okay for people to have feelings about that, as long as you, again, know what's important to you. But also, if you can give mom that flower type that she wanted in her course, why not? Just do it.
Did you experience any of this when you were planning your own wedding?
I didn't, because it was so fast. So it was more hey, we're doing this. And decisions were just made really quickly. That said, there were, because it was so fast, I think different tension points where it was a very big expense very quickly, which was okay. But it was sort of it took us all a second to be we're doing this. And my parents were very generous, as Tom's were, in helping us pay for the wedding. So it was sort of hi, guys, we're getting married. And how do you feel about paying for it, basically? So different tensions. But I think had we had more time, I think it actually leaves more space for a lot of that other stuff, because you have time to debate which florist and which cake flavor and
color schemes,
pick multiple outfits and color schemes. And, I was sort of venue available, check. Booked most of the vendors my sister booked, check. There wasn't much to fight about. It sort of just happened really fast. So,
do you think the way that we celebrate is evolving in the same way that we commit?
I think the way we celebrate is evolving to reflect all of the different things that are important in our life. And I think that I love this shift of celebrating more things. I think that I don't necessarily believe it has a reflection on the commitment to marriage, but I think that there is absolutely more of a focus in that it's not just about that. And like, I have friends who are blowing out their 40th birthdays in a way that some might say, that's like having a wedding. It's like, well, why not? Life is short. And I think celebrating in ways that are really curated and really meaningful to the person, well beyond the wedding, is, I think, a reflection on not the deprioritization of marriage, but sort of like, on some ways, putting it in its place, where there are lots of things in life worthy of celebrating. Having kids, their milestones, your parents' milestones. And I, even in work, we went through a pandemic, and the ability to celebrate your teammates and do all of that in person. I think it's, again, less that weddings have been deprioritized because people aren't committed to it, more like there's an abundance of things to celebrate, and it's not my defining moment anymore. It's a piece of my life.
When you say people are celebrating more than just the wedding, what do those events look like?
Oh, gosh, there are so...
And have you had any of them?
So, yes. So I'm trying to think of a unique example for you. Okay, our head of marketing, Allie, who's amazing, had an adult bar mitzvah for herself recently. And it was her birthday, but it wasn't necessarily like, she just did it up, and it was adorable and curated and thoughtful, but it was something that meant a lot to her because it was, speaking to her heritage, but in a funny way that was playful with friends. And, she's in a phase of life, as an example, where like her friends are, like changing, there's this moment in being in New York where you hit your 30s and people leave and they come and go, and because we're all on top of each other in apartments, and then you have kids in the mix and all of that. So I thought, like, what a fun way to bring a reason to celebrate. Like, yes, it's your birthday, but like in making it such a moment and giving that to all of your friends too, I just think is iconic. And I think about, like, that's something we see really our clientele doing is, yes, the wedding, this pinnacle moment that they're very excited about, but they're also like taking promotion vacations and really thinking about their best friends' milestones and engagement and having babies and, getting the big job title. Like, these are all things that we're seeing start to elevate in terms of like the level of curation, level of thought. And I love seeing people celebrate, what's happening in their own life, and rather than just sort of like, it's socially acceptable to spend and curate really for a wedding, but not necessarily for some of these other things. Because I don't think that is the measure of success anymore by any stretch of the imagination, where when you look back 50, 100 years in sort of the history of weddings, is that it was this identity-defining moment, certainly for women. So I love seeing that evolve and change.
How would you define success today?
I think success today is such a highly personal definition. I think for me, success looks like achieving that harmony and being kind to myself. But I think for others, it can look really different.
Where can people find Mostest and follow you?
Yeah, so you can find us at joinmostest.com. You can actually book an event planner in minutes for really any type of event, big and small. And you can follow us at Join Mostest, and we'd love to help you plan your next celebration.
Thank you so much for being here, Sarah. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me.